Type 1 diabetes is an unforgiving, non-discriminatory, life-changing disease. Type 1 diabetes affects not only its sufferers, but their families as well. I'm Whitney Carey, and I'm very familiar with this struggle because my niece Taylor is a type 1 diabetic. Type 1 diabetes can have severe costs, and I'd like to talk about those costs today, as well as the physical and financial effects it can have, and how type 1 diabetes is being treated today. So what is type 1 diabetes? The National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases state that type 1 diabetes occurs when the immune system attacks beta cells in the pancreas and the body is not able to produce insulin. Now, insulin is needed to help break down glucose or sugar in the blood system, and when this can't be done, sugar will build up, causing increased blood sugars and then type 1 diabetes. Now, doctors don't know why this happens, but they do know that genetics can play a role. Now that you know what type 1 diabetes is, let's take a look at what some of the physical aspects of this disease are. WebMD.com lists some of the most common side effects of type 1 diabetes. 3 of the most common side effects are dehydration, weight loss, and nerve damage. Now, a person with type 1 diabetes cannot clear the sugar from their blood on their own, so the body also tries to excrete the excess sugar through urine. Now, when excess sugars are excreted, additional calories that the body has not been able to absorb are excreted as well. A person with type 1 diabetes will urinate more often than a person who does not have diabetes, and this puts them at a higher risk for dehydration and weight loss. Additionally, when excess sugar builds up in the system, it can cause damage to nerves and blood vessels, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. Type 1 diabetes can also lead to a condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA. Now, DKA can occur when the body breaks down fat cells instead of glucose for energy. When fat cells are broken down, they create ketones. Ketones are acidic and, just like glucose, require insulin to be removed from the body. Since the body is not producing insulin, the ketones will build up and the body becomes acidic. I've seen my niece Taylor go through DKA a couple of times, and it's pretty scary and terrifying to watch. When she has DKA, her breathing will become shallow and she'll breathe very rapidly. She can go in and out of consciousness and have trouble with vision. She can also have trouble speaking. Now, to reverse the effects of DKA, immediate medical attention is required, and even with medical attention, some of the damage can still be permanent. Consistent medical care is also necessary for people who have type 1 diabetes. So how exactly is this disease treated? Well, FDA.gov outlines this for us. A typical type 1 diabetic will test their blood sugar several times a day to make sure they have enough insulin in their bodies. This type of measurement is done with portable monitors and meters. If additional injections of insulin are needed, they can be done one of 3 ways. Insulin injections can be given in the form of shots, insulin pens, or insulin pumps. Now, insulin shots and pens are manually given in small doses directly into the body, while an insulin pump is worn continuously and will provide a continual stream of insulin into the user depending on how much insulin they require. Since once you have type 1 diabetes, you will have it for the rest of your life. It is non-curable, and it can have quite a financial toll. Diabetes.org stated that in 2012, the cost of diabetes was $245 billion, and the average type 1 diabetic spent $7,900 on medical expenses directly related to their disease. Now, the typical type 1 diabetic can also expect to spend between $400 and $500 per month in insulin. Due to the high cost of insulin, some people have started taking less than the recommended dosage, hoping that their insulin will last longer. Other people are having to choose between buying groceries for their families and buying the medicines that they need to survive. Now, drug manufacturers are able to charge higher amounts for this because they know type 1 diabetics must have it in order to live. In another article that I read on diabetesselfmanagement.com, they attributed the high cost of insulin to another fact that there is not a generic alternative available. Now, while most of the costs of diabetes are financial, there are again some physical aspects. When diabetes causes nerve damage, it can cause your body to not heal wounds as quickly. This can lead to increased risks for infection and even amputation. MayoClinic.org's website estimated that 80% of all diabetic amputations were caused by foot ulcers or injuries. So for everyday people who can wear flip-flops or trim their toenails, it's no big deal. But when you have someone who is a type 1 diabetic, even the slightest cut or abrasion on their foot could not heal properly and could cause infection, and then they'll have a whole other world of problems leading up to amputation of their foot. In conclusion, I hope my speech has been able to provide a little bit of insight into life as a type 1 diabetic. We see information about diabetes in the news, but many of us don't realize what a horrible, life-changing disease this truly is. I hope you now believe, as I do, that it can be extremely difficult to live a life as a type 1 diabetic due to the physical and financial costs that it comes with. I thank you all so much for your time and patience today.
Very good, Whitney. But $7,900